Hello, everybody, and welcome to this presentation on digital literacy with a focus on years 3 to 6. As you can see, this is the 6th session in the series, Digital Literacy for Primary. There has been prior sessions to this one. Feel free to have a look at those at your own convenience. Okay, so just looking at the schedule that we'd like to take you through. First of all, we'll start off with some introductions and a session overview. Then we'll look at what's new in the Australian curriculum, version 9. And then we'll look at the 4 elements in the digital literacy general capability. So they are managing and operating, investigating, creating and exchanging, practicing digital safety and well-being, and then we'll finish up by wrapping up. I'd just like to introduce myself. So I've been teaching digital technologies and digital literacy in school for 5.5 years, spanning years 4 all the way through to year 12.
My name is Nathan. I've got about 11 years worth of teaching in secondary schools, digital technologies, and of course, digital literacy at the same time. And we'll be saying as we go through this presentation how digital literacy is everybody's job, in primary, but also in secondary as well. I also worked more recently for DLTV, Victoria's Subject Association for Digital Technologies and Digital Literacy.
Okay, so we just want to start off with a bit of a quiz. So what do these symbols mean? So how many do you know? And what about your students? How many would they recognize? So we might just get you to pause the video for a moment and have a think about those. So to reveal the answers, on the left is the reload the page button. We've got Wi-Fi, the home icon, the application menu, the save icon.
That application menu is sometimes referred to as the hamburger icon.
Oh yeah, you're right.
It looks a little bit like a hamburger, but I was often surprised when I heard it being called that, the hamburger. Yeah.
You're right. Yeah, one of my students couldn't believe it, actually, Nathan. Yeah, I can remember that discussion with him. Save button, the app launcher, and the extensions icon as well.
It's really fascinating when you look at some of the conventions of these sort of user interface conventions when we have to use different applications, because the save icon is a picture of a floppy disk, and many of your students have probably never seen a floppy disk. So it's this convention that's stuck around, even though it's an outdated form of technology.
Okay, so just looking at session overview. So we're going to provide an overview of the version 9 Australian curriculum, the digital literacy general capability, explore elements and sub-elements within the digital technologies general capability. We're going to think about the digital literacy demands within the learning areas and share some examples of digital literacy in action for years 3 to 6. Okay, so just want to make it really clear the difference between these terms on the screen now. So digital technologies is, it's a specific subject within technologies. It has discipline-specific content and skills. And the key thing, it's about creating digital solutions. Whereas digital literacy is about the knowledge and skills you need to use technology to solve problems. So digital technologies is about creating, and digital literacy is about using. And lowercase digital tools and technologies is the devices themselves, such as iPads, data loggers, cameras, laptops, etc. This is a helpful graphic that is on the Digital Technologies Hub. I did want to point out it refers to the version 8.4 of the curriculum when when the general capability was called information and communication technology. So you can see that on the left, use ICT. So in version 9, we refer to digital literacy, not ICT. This is just a really helpful graphic to just quickly have a quick glance to see what technology you're using and whether it is digital literacy or you are in fact doing digital technologies.
So as Chad pointed out, like the digital literacy side, or which is called ICT here, but digital literacy side is more to do with the way students safely and responsibly use technology to accomplish tasks, whereas digital technologies, the discipline, the subject, is more about getting under the hood, understanding the technology they're using, and creating new technology. So that's kind of the difference between the two and the kinds of tasks you can see there.
I've often had quite a few conversations with teachers and students, and I like to say that it's easy to consume technology, and students are great at that, but creating technology yourself is a whole other fascinating world that you need to learn about if you want to be able to do it. These cards are fantastic on the Grok website. So if you wanted to practice what category is managing files in or analyzing information, you can use these cards and then make decisions whether that particular activity is digital literacy or in digital technologies.
And this is a great staff room activity. It doesn't take long, and you could get your fellow teachers to have a go. On the back, if you don't look at the back, it's like a little game you can play. And then on the back, it tells you whether that particular thing is digital literacy or whether it's digital technologies learning area subject. Now, when we look at the changes between version 8.4 and version 9 in the Australian curriculum, there are some changes to structure and language. It has changed quite a bit, this general capability. There's reorganization of the elements within it. There's a whole new element, which covers a lot of stuff to do with cyber safety and digital well-being. And there's more explicit links to learning areas. And we'll be talking about those demands in the learning areas during this presentation. To get a bit of a picture, they also changed the sort of standard kind of diagram to represent this. Instead of sort of the multiple circles, we've really just got these four parts of the lens there, the four what we call elements of digital literacy general capability, and we'll be going through each of those four today. So what does it mean to be digitally literate? We know that, literacy has to do with being able to read and write. We know that numeracy has been able to do with being able to work with numbers. What does digital literacy actually mean? Akara does give quite a long thing about what digital literacy is. And when you have a moment, you might want to read that through in detail. But we can also give you a shortened or sort of a more distilled version of the things that you do when you're digitally literate. Creating, managing, communicating, investigating data, information, and ideas. You're solving problems. You're working collaboratively with technology. You're critically identifying and appropriately selecting which digital devices to use, which systems to use. And then you're protecting safety of yourself and others in digital environments. And that's what's captured in these elements. So let's have a look at the very first of the elements we're going to do today, which is managing and operating.
Yeah, thanks, Nathan. Yes, so the sub elements for managing and operating manage content, protect content, select and operate tools. Okay, so within this element, there's different levels as well. So just wanted to point those out. So for level 3, actually is for years 3 and 4, and level 4 is for years 5 and 6. So if we were just to have a look at the different, these are expectations. So if we were to look at protect content and just move our way from left to right, at level 3, you've got save and access content in shared folders using the individual school account. Whereas for level 4, we've got protect content when sharing with peers and trusted adults by setting appropriate access controls. So you can see it's a bit more complex in level 4.
So we're in our first example, we're going to be choosing this sub-element of selecting and operating tools. And we've highlighted the bit we're interested in for this example, selecting and using a range of digital tools to complete tasks. That's at level 3. And then at level 4, it's selecting using the core features of digital tools to efficiently complete tasks. And we've got a little activity again. What tool do you select? What's the tool that is the most suited to purpose? You want to write an essay. So we'll be giving you the answers for these as we go. But if you want to write an essay, you might use Word or Docs or Pages. So what we call word processing tools for writing an essay. And there might even be more than those, but that's your Microsoft, your Google, and your Apple sort of big boys. But there might be some other ones that you can think of as well for writing an essay. Next one.
Produce visual aids for a presentation. So something you could use as PowerPoint or slides or Keynote for that one.
Do some basic photo editing. The type of software that students might use are what we call photo editing tools. Photoshop is a very big, well-known one, but there's also tools there's one that's Windows free, is Paint.net, that's often used because it's kind of quite a simple view, but it still has layers. And then a more advanced one that works on Windows and other platforms as well is GIMP. But these are all photo editing tools.
Okay, yeah. So if you're editing a video, what tool would you use there? So you could use iMovie if you had an iPad, or Final Cut or Premiere as well.
And then composing a song. This is one that, unless you're a music teacher, you may not be familiar with a lot of the software used for audio editing and music. But GarageBand is a well-known one and works on iPads as well. And that's one that you may have heard of for editing music and creating music. One of the free ones that's used for notation of music is MuseScore. And then Audacity is a very popular tool, free tool for editing audio itself. So the actual waveform of the audio.
That's a picture of GarageBand there. Nathan, you're familiar with the interface?
I've actually not used GarageBand myself much at all.
Yeah.
So it's I'd have to learn it if I went to use it. Have you used it a little bit, Chad?
No, I was hoping you're going to say, yeah, I reckon.
But it's we need to find a music teacher who's used it.
Yes. Analyze and visualize data. So yeah, an obvious one is Excel, but there's also sheets and there's numbers as well.
And then here we thought we'd pick one just to show that these are not all sort of legacy type of applications, but there's also more innovative applications as well. So creating an AR experience, an augmented reality experience, where you can hold up a device in front of something and you get to see things superimposed on the screen. And some of the apps or services used for that, there's one called Reality Composer, which runs on, say, an iPad. And then there's CoSpaces EDU, which is a whole environment for creating VR and AR sort of experiences. So these are just some of the tools that you might find yourself using in the classroom for digital literacy. The big thing that we really wanted to emphasize today is how digital literacy, we talk about demands in learning areas. So digital literacy is not a subject. It's not meant to be something that one teacher teaches and everyone else is off the hook. But actually, it's something that's demanded in the learning areas. So, for example, if the science teacher wants to use simulation software to view phenomena or wants to access, collect, and analyze data, that teacher should be teaching the students those skills. It doesn't mean you can't work with perhaps the digital technologies teacher or somebody else to help you, but ideally, the skills that are needed, that are demanded, they are part of this general capability, this digital literacy capability. You can refer back to this slide later, but there's a lot of information here, obviously, but we wanted to show how there's demands in all of these different learning areas.
Nathan, I just want to add, if a teacher has an assessment task and it includes students assessing, collecting, and analysing the data, then they need to learn, they need to learn to be able to do that if it is included in the assessment task as well, which would be part of the teachers, teaching the digital literacy demands, which would be fantastic.
Yeah. What we thought we'd do next is just take you to the curriculum website. I'm going to follow this link in a moment to one of the elements in the digital literacy that we're looking at. So I'm just going to quickly switch over to that now. So here we are over at the digital literacy page as part of the version 9 Australian curriculum website. The digital literacy general capabilities here, and then we've selected the managing and operating element, and you can see it's shown here. And as we scroll down, here's our 3 sub-elements that we can jump to. We're interested in selecting an operating tool, so we'll just jump down to there. And then we're interested in one of the, perhaps the level 3 one or level 4 one, selecting and using a range of digital tools. And you can see all these icons. Sometimes there's more than others. These ones have a lot, but sometimes you'll see there's less or more. But basically, these will take you to the subject area. So M for maths, HAS, languages, and so on. So if I click on, let's do science, click on that one. And you can see we've got here the same thing, select and use a range of tools. And then it's giving us the appropriate links. There's the humanities, languages, mathematics, and sciences over here. And there's a mapping from the sub-element across to the content description in the learning area. So we see that there's a science content description here, for example, following procedures to make and record observations, including making formal measurements using familiar scaled instruments and using digital tools as appropriate. So there's a clear connection there, and they give you even an elaboration on that connection. So that's one example, but as you can see, there's often a number of mapping acrosses that can be made where the subject and the learning area are making a demand on digital literacy. We'll just return back to our presentation now, and we'll continue on. And we've got a specific example that Chad's going to show now.
Yeah, so if you were in science, if you were to ask students to do some formal measurements and collect some data, so you're asking them to select and use a tool, but what are the digital literacy demands in them knowing how to use the tool and what the units are, and then how they, like the data logger there might be sensing information to do with sound or temperature, and then how does the student know how to get the data that's on the device into a spreadsheet, and then analyze the data that's in the spreadsheet and so forth. So yeah, just if you're teaching science, that's really fantastic if you can think about the digital literacy demands that you're placing on the student to achieve the task with the technology. So the next element we're going to have a look at is investigating. And there's 3 sub-elements, as you can see: locate information, acquire and collect data, acquire and collate data, and interpret data. Okay, so once again, for this element, you can see that we've got a table and there's 3 sub-elements, and we've got the 2 levels, level 3 and level 4. So if we move on to the next slide, we're going to actually zero in on locate information. So locate information through search engines. So we'll just have a look. So if you were asking students to locate information using a search engine, it might be in design and technology area. So they might be using the search engine to look up recipes. Or it might be, if it was HAS and you're doing some geography, you might be asking students to find out information about habitats for kangaroos. But it's one thing to just send the students off to use the browser and off they go. But if we can give them some explicit guidelines in using the search engine, that can be fantastic. So I've got some examples here. So if you ask students to select the search terms really carefully, so for example, if you were to put in how to bake the best apple pie, that actually returns millions of results. So if you're a bit more careful with the terms that we use, Dutch apple pie returns a lot fewer and more specific results. In saying that though, sometimes you can use more words to narrow the search. So there's a big difference between kangaroo and habitats of kangaroos in Australia. If the words aren't working, students could try synonyms if the search was not successful. You can use a minus sign, so spots on cats, spots on animals minus cats. Give the results of any potential animal except for cats, and double quotation marks search for terms as an exact phrase. So if you were to do a query with the double quotation marks, Anthony Norman Albanese, it only returns sites that refer to him by his full name and not sites that just cite have, say, Anthony Albanese with his middle name missing. So these are some safe search engines that would be good for primary students. So there's Kiddle, there's Kidtopia, there's FactMonster, and there's Safe Search Kids. It's actually a lot more than I realized, which is, yeah, it's excellent. So you could encourage your students to use those rather than the default ones that we just go to as adults.
Yeah, I think it's all about learning to use these search engines appropriately, isn't it? Like it's not just using them to get the best stuff, but also being aware that what you find may not be always correct and knowing how to work with that and everything too.
Yeah, so we've gone off and found some resources for you for learning to use the internet. So code.org do fantastic videos, and this video is called The Internet, How Search Works, but it also goes into the ways that you can use terms to get more specific results. And a teacher librarian has a fantastic blog that has some internet search skills lessons. And you could also put this poster up in the classroom as well as a reminder for your students.
It might be something to ask your school library or your teacher librarian about whether or not they do kind of an introduction to internet searching in the way that they might introduce students how to use the library. Do they also introduce students perhaps on behalf of the school how to use a Google search properly and how to safely use it? That could be a great way for that to be done in a school. The next one, still in the investigating element here, we're looking at the next sub-element, acquiring and collating data. And we thought we'd focus on how we collect data, how we access data for use in various different learning areas. And I thought of the classic example of the car park tally. So this might usually happen in a maths class. The teacher wants to do some statistics. So they say to the students, right, we're going to go out to the staff car park. We're going to count the cars. We'll count the colors, like the different colors, or we might count the different manufacturers or the different shapes of the cars. We'll do tallies and then we'll, add them all up. So that could be, that's a classic. You put it down on paper. Maybe you make up some kind of bar chart when you get back to class. Mm-hmm. In terms of bringing in some digital technologies, obviously there is the paper survey, but then you can manually type that paper survey into a spreadsheet, into Excel or into Google Sheets to get some data into a digital solution there so that you can create charts and analyze the data a little bit. It could also be an online survey. If you do it as an online survey, then the data can just go straight into a spreadsheet because it's all online, it's all done digitally. But there is an important note with online surveys, particularly if students are creating the surveys, that if those surveys are going to go out to a large number of people and to peers, the teacher might want to review that before it goes out because students need to learn appropriate questions to put on surveys. Taking photos. Photos are another form of data, and so are videos. With photos, though, there isn't always a straightforward way to organize them. So it could be an interesting challenge for students to develop a system for organizing photos that they collect once they're on a computer or on a device. And then another one that sometimes isn't thought about is using electronic sensors. And I know we had the dedicated data logger pictured earlier on Chad's slide there. But you can also use classroom robots. So talk to your digital technologies teacher, see if they've got microbits like this or other devices that are in the Digitech classroom. They can also be used for collecting data to be used for that work. So for example, in this case, collecting the data on the moisture in the soil. The last one, though, is another one that's sometimes not discussed very much, but the idea of using online data repositories. So what do we mean by that? Well, suppose students in HASS were doing research on rainfall in a particular area. They might go to the Bureau of Meteorology to find that information. Or if they wanted information about the census, they might go to the ABS. Or there's another site called Our World in Data that has a whole lot of data that's quite easy to access. So once you go there, though, you might get something like this, which is not really that easy to access for students. These websites will allow you to download enormous Excel files worth of data, big XLS files that have all these columns and rows. And that might really throw off a year 3 to 6 student. So the teacher may want to scaffold that data. We sometimes call that cleaning the data by doing a little bit of work in Excel themselves. Or by finding some data that's already been processed a little bit or summarized a bit, so that it's not so daunting to actually access. In secondary years, of course, one of the skills we would want students to learn is how to do that process of going from that to that and doing that analysis. We're moving on to our next element, which is creating and exchanging.
Excellent. Thanks, Nathan. Yeah, so the next element has, again, 3 sub-elements: plan, create, communicate, and collaborate, and respect intellectual property. So we can see the table again. We've got the 3 sub-elements on the left and the 2 levels.
Yeah, so we're going to zero in on the first row here, planning, using digital tools to plan, and develop and follow a basic plan, or develop and follow a plan. And the example we've got here is to basically use a digital tool when students are ideating, coming up with ideas. So an example could be using something like Padlet, which is kind of like a shared sticky note board where students can just put up all sorts of sticky notes and they can collaborate on them, change them, add comments, things like that. And so this could be really useful for coming up with ideas, maybe for a narrative project. Students might use some software like this to come up with ideas for the narrative. Or we might use a spreadsheet again. We keep talking about spreadsheets because they're such a useful tool. If you use them as an adult, you probably know that they're great. You use them all the time in your everyday life. But a spreadsheet can also be a great tool to use for assigning timeframes to tasks and doing that sort of project planning. And these days, whether you're using Excel, the Microsoft one, or Google Sheets, if the environment at your school is set up, and it probably is, you can do this collaboratively. Students can interact on the same spreadsheet and work together on it. They can all access it and edit it.
Okay, yeah, so the next sub-element, I'm going to focus on create, communicate, and collaborate. So using digital tools to create content and communicate what's being created to the audience. So just students, you might be doing HASS, or you might be doing science, and looking at renewable energy and solar that's happening on or how much solar we have on Australian rooftops. So it's a bit of a process to go through to learn how to produce an infographic. We actually decided to use the platform Canva. They do have a free tier, and I was really impressed with how fun it was and quick to knock up an infographic that you can see on the right. So first, if you ask students to do this as well, like this is a process that you could take them through, like the digital literacy demands to produce an infographic like this. So first of all, to learn how to do this, I had to watch a video or read an article how to develop an infographic, and I chose a topic. So obviously that's solar on Australian rooftops. And then I went off and found some credible information to be displayed in the infographic. So I use Australian government website to get all the information that's on this infographic, just to make sure that it is credible. It is sourced down the bottom there. Yeah, so then you create an account and select the most suitable template for the or the structure you really need for your infographic. Yeah, and the structure is important as well because it needs to be engaging. So you're summarizing information, you communicating information, but the structure needs to suit because it really needs to be engaging and catch someone's eye. And then you can customize the text and color scheme. Note the green and gold color scheme there for the rooftop on Australian Solar. And the last thing was just to customize the icons and the charts. Yeah, so really quickly you can see, looking at that chart, that 30% of Australian homes have rooftop solar. And then you can just, it's really easy to share your design just using a link with students could share their design with their peers or with their teacher just via a link, which is handy.
Just a note on that whole sharing thing, like we often see in the general capability and sometimes in content descriptions, it will say safely share this, so you might want to consider how that works at your school. Perhaps you have some kind of internal site or page where you share things in your school so that it's not just shared directly on the wider internet, and that students are learning how to safely do that without, for example, putting their name all over it if it's going to be then shared on the internet and things like that too. We wanted to pick one more from this element as well, creating and exchanging. And we've got here respecting intellectual property. And what I've decided to pick up with this one is this idea of Creative Commons. You may have heard of the Creative Commons licenses, but basically they're a way of categorizing and tagging anything that's been created, whether it's pictures or photos or text or story, anything that someone has made can be tagged with a Creative Commons license. And you can see that some of the basic ideas, that the bottom two categories, public domain and Creative Commons 0, those two categories mean that you can do whatever you want. There's no copyright at all. So that piece of work, that photo, for example, can be used in any way. But then as we look at some of the other licenses, we see that they do become a bit more restrictive. Not as restrictive as a complete copyright, but for example, on the left there, if it says by, and it's got the little icon of the person, that means that you can only use that work if you give attribution to the original author or photo taker or whoever it was that created that asset. And then it gets more restrictive as we go along. So by ND means no derivatives. You can use the work, it's just that you can't actually then modify and change the work. You have to present it as it is. So this could be a way of getting students used to the idea of copyright and the fact that there are other licenses that can be used, and students should be giving attribution where it's asked for and where it's appropriate to do so in their work.
Nathan, I just want to really quickly link what you're saying there about Creative Commons and search engines, because you can filter the results you get through a Google search and just to return Creative Commons images, for example, which is
that's right. That's right. And there's certain websites too that just provide images that you are allowed to use, although sometimes it is with attribution, so you have to know. So yeah, and then these are some other resources related to Creative Commons, and some links there that you can have a look at as well, including that third one is actually a primary school lesson from Common Sense Education that's all about this topic.
So moving on to our final element that we're going to look at, which is practicing digital safety and wellbeing. Again, there's 3 sub-elements: manage online safety, manage digital privacy and identity, and manage digital well-being. So we have our table again with the 3 sub-elements on the left and the 2 levels, 3 and 4. We're going to focus in on the managing digital well-being, the healthy use of digital tools and well-being.
And so we've got another example where if you went to the website, you would come up with this from the level 4. Here's our expectation: reporting negative or harmful online behavior to trusted adults and recognizing when to step away from negative online interactions. And we've got a link there to HPE. So if we were to click that, it links us to this content description for HPE, analyze and rehearse protective behaviors and health-seeking strategies. And you can see there that it says used in a range of online and offline situations. So an example task that students might do could be to create an informative video where they rehearse a scenario. They demonstrate healthy and unhealthy online behavior, and maybe discuss some consequences or talk about that. So that could be a video that they produce as part of the HPE class, and they're answering a demand for the use of digital literacy, which involves them making the video, doing some video editing, and talking about online behavior. Now, what about your school? What does your school do when it comes to this topic of practicing digital safety and wellbeing? We did say that this was new in the version 9 Australian curriculum, but we also know that cyber safety has been expected at schools for quite a while. So perhaps your school does cyber safety programs once per year, and they might go some way to addressing this general capability. Perhaps you have a user agreement at your school, so something that everyone has to sign in order to use the digital technologies at the school. And you might have stuff about cyberbullying, some awareness programs, maybe an incursion or something that happens when you talk about cyberbullying, or maybe a program that each teacher is expected to do in their homerooms. Now, if you watched the previous webinar on privacy and security, you would have seen this resource, the Cyber Marvel 2023, which includes this digital detective cards as part of that. So we recommend having a look. If you want to know more about this, have a good look at the previous webinar, session 5 of years 3 to 6, and there'll be a lot more information about this. Although this is for digital technologies, because it's relating to online wellbeing as well, it's very much connected to this digital literacy element as well. And also there's this course that's on the Grok website, on the Grok platform, Information Privacy and Security, and that takes you to a whole little course where it's all about what friends can find out about each other on social media, and what someone can find out if people share too much stuff. So that's it.
I have to say, Nathan, I've never seen students so engaged in an activity as the information privacy and security course. The fake social media apps and trying to stay safe on the pretend ones so that they can know what they're doing when they're using real social media apps, and they can stay safe in real environments. The students absolutely love this course. It's awesome.
One of the main digital wellbeing resources in Australia is the Office of the E-Safety Commissioner. There's a lot of stuff there, not just for schools, but also for families as well. So we do highly recommend having a look at that. Some of these resources were also mentioned in the previous webinar, privacy and security. So definitely worth a look at some of those. One other resource we wanted to mention just before we finish today is these books. These are Kim Maslin's books. She's an Australian author, and these are great picture books that are all about different challenges that students and kids can face online and using technology. And they have activities. A number of the books have activities at the back as well that can be used in a classroom. So
I actually, sorry, Nathan, I actually read The Surfing Penguin to my kids last night, which is really interesting. And we went through the reflection questions, and it was really interesting. My son forecast where the story was going to go. So someone made a decision to post something on a device, and then there's a consequence, like what's going to happen because that happened. And he actually predicted what was going to happen. So it really gets students thinking about when you, post something that goes out there to the world, there's consequences. And so it's really, awesome. Really awesome.
So we thought we'd finish up. This slide we've been showing at each of the webinars, but just a reminder, the material that's on the Grok platform is free for every Australian student and teacher. This is part of a 5-year partnership between Grok and WiseTech Global to make Digitech skills available to every Australian student, teacher, parent, and adult learner for free. And Grok's mission is to educate all learners in these computing skills. So the partnership with WiseTech does have the effect of removing that financial barrier to schools in using the resources. So we're really excited about it, and we showed an example of one of our courses before, so you can definitely use that as part of this.
So we just wanted to thank you today for listening in and watching our presentation on digital literacy. We wish you all the best implementing the ideas that we've shared with you with fellow teachers and your students as well. If you did need to contact us, there's help@grokacademy.org, and then you can see our website as well on the left. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.